Welcome to Focus on Why, the podcast where reflection sparks action. I'm Amy Rowlandson, and together we'll explore compelling stories, profound insights, and transformative experiences from inspiring guests worldwide. Feeling lost or unfulfilled? Searching for clarity, purpose, or meaning in your work and life? This podcast invites you on a journey of self-discovery to align your work with your values, shape your future with intention, and create a purposeful way of life. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Before we dive in, are you considering creating a podcast, or are you already hosting one, but it's not producing the results you desire? As a podcast strategist, I can help you launch or relaunch a purposeful and profitable podcast that will inspire, entertain, and educate a global audience. Book a call with me today. The link is in the show notes, and let's transform your podcast vision into reality. Today on Focus on Why, I am joined by Stephen Bruyant-Langer. Hello, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Thank you, Amy.
And I've said your name in English, but how else can you say it?
Well, I work out of Denmark, out of Copenhagen, Denmark. And in Danish, it would be Stephen Bruyant-Langer. And in French, my mother is French. I have double nationality, Danish and French. And in French, it would be Stéphane Bruyant-Langer. So you choose. Let's keep it in the UK way.
Absolutely. It's just a case of sometimes, we have these different ways of presenting ourselves across the world. And it does matter to ensure that you're meeting people where they are and recognizing what their preference is. So your preference today is for Stephen. Let's go for that. That's great.
Right. Yeah.
So welcome to the show. What is it you're focusing on right now, Stephen?
Well, I'm focusing on combining my experience for the use of others, reach a level and in my life and a stage where I focus on giving back, and it's become clearer and clearer. And as we haven't prepared any questions, Amy, this actually came very spontaneously. This is my focus going forward, and I tend to join the necessary, let's say, the financial perspective, the business perspective, with a sort of rendering service to others, and taking on assignments and projects that are not, let's say, financially motivated, and it's become a greater and greater part of what I do. For example, in 2 weeks' time, I'm having a presentation for my boxing club, the members of my boxing club and the members of my running club, and that of course is benevolent and no fees involved at all. But it's sort of important to give, since I have some experience, 30 or 35 years of experience coaching and teaching and recruiting. Then there are some key messages that I'm aware of, and probably you also as an author are aware of, that we can pass on. I've done it in my own family. We have Meta, and my wife Meta and me we have 4 children and now 10 grandchildren, the 11th coming. And we sort of have succeeded in giving certain values to the clan, which is important. We see that grow. We see a fulfillment and a satisfaction and a joy in that. And that has meant that I tend to pass on to a wider circle of people. Well, it was a very long answer to a short question, but you sort of get the drift, right?
I do, very much so. And there are several questions that I have from that. And the first one is, you mentioned that you take on projects that are not necessarily financially motivated. What is the filter for you for taking on a project?
Very often simply personal relationships. It's one person referring to another person, asking whether I can help. And to be honest, the difficulty or the work involved in giving solutions or giving advice in something that you're proficient in is very little. So the investment of time for me is, compared to the value I create, is relatively limited. So let's say, why not use that leverage? So very often a telephone conversation of half an hour would actually, bring that person or that project or further. So I think it's a question of, step changing, giving another external perspective to clients or to their relationships. So lots of my work is simply giving a direction, very often a longer term perspective than the ones that the person in front of me has. Just this morning, I had a meeting with a person where we talked about rather pragmatic things like board memberships and roles. And at the end of the conversation, it was about, where do they want to, as a couple, to live in 10 years? What sort of obligations, moral or ethical or financial, do they still have? So we broadened it out and created a whole new, let's say, perspective, more holistic, probably.
And this
but
point in
also more long term, and that's where probably your book and the purpose and the why is important, because that needs to be the underpinning dimension, the overarching dimension.
And at this point in your life, you mentioned that it's important for you to be giving back, or that you're in a position to be giving back, and that there's a shift after 35 years from coaching into this more mentoring role that you're now assuming, whether that be in your family or whether that be in a more professional space. What are those key messages that you feel the desire to pass on?
Well, I can as well quote my fundamental values, which are the having a life ambition, so knowing where to go, being learning agile, knowing what to do when you don't know what to do is a mantra of mine, and then the personal reinvention, that we go through different stages in life and we need to adapt to those. It's the transitions that are hard. It's not the phases. It's the transitions, the breaking points, the inflection points in life that are difficult. And then the fourth value would be courage to commit. Not only talk about things or having intentions to do something with your life, but actually commit. We've taught our children to, get a partner, get an apartment, get children, sort of do stuff and commit instead of waiting for the external circumstances to change and also hoping for something to change. You need to create your own basis for development and your own foundation, trusting the future, trusting that you will go in a direction where you will have a better position, which means that you can make choices from a new and enhanced position. There's no risk in making choices.
I agree. And you described that your life ambition, the personal reinvention, the courage to commit, and there was another one. I'm not sure you mentioned it.
Learning agility, probably.
Learning agility. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
great. So those are the 4 fundamental values that you describe. For me, they're ways of being and they're ways of operating. And so what I was looking for is what is at the core for you to have those as your ways of operating? What is it that is the ultimate goal for you?
Existential clarity. And that's that's actually what I promised my clients. The first time I looked a client in the eye and said, I will deliver existential clarity, so I thought it was big words. And so sort of I'm coming onto dangerous ground here, over promising, but that is what I do. And the books I've written and the coaching and the sparring and the mentoring I do is actually in order to bring existential clarity to the person in front of me. If we look at the professional angle, then it would be things like boardroom appearance or executive presence or relaxed readiness. So that's more the form in which they perform, right? But as humans, we need to aim for existential clarity. And there are so many tools, as you very well know, having studied and read and written about this theme. You are quite versed in this, but there are so many tools and techniques and literature, and therefore, in my latest book, The Existential Playbook: How to Survive, Live, and Thrive, I have been a sort of a multi academic looking at a four-leaf clover where you have meaning in the middle, and then on the four petals you have philosophy, psychology, neurology, and strategy. So I try to condense and synthesize everything we know, and I mean everything. I mean, from the ancient philosophers to the newest neurologists. So both culture and science, bringing that together. And I have tried to extract all the knowledge that we have from these four fields of research. And also I've taken my own medicine, because one of the counsel, or one of the advice I give to many people, is that they need to ask for help. They need to reach out. And in writing this, my third book in the trilogy, what I wanted to do was to build on the shoulders of giants. And so I worked with an expert panel, a neurologist, a philosopher, a psychologist, and a strategist, whom could, let's say, verify all my research. Because since I'm not a philosopher, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a neurologist, I'm not a strategist, I know a lot about these things, but I still wanted sort of a quality stamp to be on the safe side. So the newest book, The Existential Playbook, was a co-creation, whereas my first two books were me, myself, I, working alone, of course, with consultants and publishers, etc., but editors. But the work was personal, whereas now it has been become more collective, which means also that it broadens out the perspective and sort of gives a different value. The neurologist, who's a science guy, actually, tended to look at us, the three others or four others in the expert panel, with disbelief, thinking, how can you say that when we talk about meaning and purpose and the why and the future? He's at a completely different space, looking at facts and data and research, etc. So it's interesting to confront these different types of views, and they are so deeply rooted in us due to our education. I'm an economist by education, and there's so many things I take for granted. And of course, if you're a philosopher, you don't know these things. So I really try to integrate knowledge. And we shortly, when we discussed last time, Amy, we talked about your use of purpose and why. I have chosen to use the word meaning, probably because I have a philosophical tendency. My mother is French, as I mentioned, and I grew up with existentialists like Jean-Paul Sartre being the rock star of the generation, and Albert Camus, the James Dean of philosophy. So I sort of have an attraction to the, let's say, after-war years, and a natural, let's say, understanding of that. So I'm coming from there, but so I use the word meaning instead of purpose and why, and probably also because I think it's deeper. But for me, it's sort of rooted in a deeper school of thought, whereas purpose and why has come up later in history. So I think I've sort of went back to the origin. And well, you know probably Viktor Frankl, A Man's Search for Meaning, etc. So there's a whole school of thinking where meaning is the basic dimension or concept, actually.
And it's really interesting that you're switching, having written this third book, from that I perspective to the we perspective, because I do feel as you go through life that you become less of an individual and more aware of the global consciousness and the unity being more important. And that was the evolution that I take people through in my model, in my book as well, which is to understand that individually, yes, you can go so far, but collectively we can achieve so much more. And this growth and also the desire for you to have the mastery from the different areas, the experts speaking from a position of credibility and to give your work more credibility as well. But this sort of, there is a need to be autonomous in life, but there's also this need to understand how we can be in harmony, and we can sort of understand that we are all part of one great living system, and I don't know, universe, cosmic order, whatever it can be, if you describe it like that, but a consciousness. We are a collective consciousness, and the work that we're both absolutely fascinating by, the desire for us to shift this understanding, for people to be more aware of their existential clarity. Yeah, you said that, and you said you were in danger of over promising, yet it is possible to have clarity around what's important to you. The actual why we exist question, a very different matter.
Yeah, but I think we need to appreciate the value of being together with others. Søren Kierkegaard, the first, let's say, existentialist philosopher, who was Danish, actually took a human bath every day, which means he sat and wrote his work. And but every day he went out into the city, into the old city town, and had his human bath. And I experienced that myself. I recently was on holidays, in the Easter holidays, and my morning routine is to go for a run. I talk with a fishmonger down at the harbor. I talk to the baker. I go to a local cafe, probably meet somebody I know, and it is all part of refueling and getting started, in the day. And I've been more and more conscious that I belong to different groups. If you had asked me, 10, 15 years ago, whether I was an individualist or a collectivist, I would have definitely said an individualist. Then I've seen I already mentioned that I'm a member of a boxing club. I'm a member of a running club. I'm a member of a group of 40 people who go to a rock festival every year. I'm a member of some management societies, and you could, continue the list. And that is, of course, not an individualist. That is a sort of collectivist, being together with groups in different relationships. And therefore, there is a progression in life, and the daily act of simply saying hi, to many people, the daily hi means something to you, but also to the persons receiving that message. Being seen, being acknowledged, being praised sometimes, simply a gentle nod when crossing somebody in the street is a sort of when you cross people walking, you greet, and there's so many small occasions where you can acknowledge the presence of others and actually well, have a positive impact in the closest relationships, right?
And this positive impact that can be witnessed through your daily highs or the focus that you have and with your wife given to your clan, the desire to ensure that certain values have been adopted. What is it that you see as the core message for your family to have taken on board what you have, but also given the freedom in terms of taking on board what also matters to them?
One candidate for an answer would be some, consistency or persistency, simply having this as a priority, being value oriented, and also in brackets, let's say, sacrificing something for doing, the right things right. Jensen Huang, the founder of NVIDIA, says that it's not a question about doing more, it's a question of doing better. And that's, of course, easy when you're a billionaire to say so. But I think there is a shift from not only focusing on quantity, but also on quality. And regarding my own family, it has very much been a question of quality in relationships. My wife says that there is no quality time. It's only a question of time. So you need to prioritize the time and give the important things in life enough time or space in order to develop. My psychology friend, who is a member of the expert panel, very often uses the following sentence, where focus goes, energy flows. Where focus goes, energy flows. And I see this as an automatic reaction, that if you focus on something, then there will come energy out of it. But of course, if you're busy doing other things, then you will never grow the most important things.
And your latest book, you described it as a playbook. And somebody said to me the other day that my book was a textbook, and I'd never really thought of it as being like that. And yet, essentially both of them are these sort of manuals, these life guide companions to understand who you are, what matters, and how you can be authentic. Now, you said that you are a member of lots of different clubs, that you belong to different groups. And yet, I would imagine that you don't feel as though you fit in. There is this belonging, a deep belonging, but they're very different spaces that you feel as though you naturally belong.
Oh yeah, it's totally different. I think the most extraordinary is this rock festival where we've been going for 25 years. The norms in the camp are different. The culture is different. The wording, there's the external world, and then there's us, and it's, well, you wouldn't imagine it. There's a guy who's a chairman of a large company in Denmark, and he goes crowd surfing, even though it's prohibited or forbidden. And you see this. I think he's about 70 now, right? He would probably not do that in other circumstances. And then people in his usual, let's say, surrounding would be surprised. So sort of everything is permitted, unless, of course, you hurt other people. But it's a male camp, and therefore there was, at one point in time, there was one guardian who needed to have a fire pathway, a security pathway through the camp, and that meant that somebody from outside the camp actually were involved. They came in the tent camp, and there was a woman. There was a British woman called Jane, and we didn't bulge. We addressed everything. We called her James, And then there was stiff upper lip, and then for 4 days, there was no mentioning of a woman at the camp. But sort of rituals and that's probably the essential thing is to to have fun and enjoy the ride. And therefore you need to establish some places where you can be totally free, totally unhinged, totally relaxed and without judgment, and simply for the fun of it. And we've had so many wonderful experiences. That same goes with a boxing club, where if you look at the surroundings, it's not clean. It smells. There's loud rock music, sort of bad taste, but it's liberating to be able to get some energy out, and also physically, of course, you can create your own endorphins, right? It's automatic, just like the human bath. There's no doubt that you will become or obtain a nicer feeling, or a more relaxed feeling. And since it's automatic, then why not do it? There's absolutely no reason for not creating a better feeling, because then you're also able to have more energy for others. I have a mantra saying that I want to leave a room with more energy than when I enter. And so I'm very conscious when I enter a room that, let's say, it has to be invigorated. I need to do something in order to build some energy in the room. And as a professional coach, etc., it's not that difficult, but it still means that you need to have that awareness that you can make a difference, right?
And this personal reinvention that I'm hearing here, while you were speaking, I wrote down liberating, and I wrote down liberation, but then you actually said the word liberating shortly afterwards, and I'd written down fun and freedom, and you mentioned both of those words. What I'm hearing is that as you've got older, you realize that you can have fun and it's okay. There's this sort of going through the 20s, 30s, 40s. It's when we get into 50s and 60s that actually you realize, my goodness, all this time I've been trying to perform, and actually I could have just had a lot more fun and been much more freer.
I have a small blog post I made a couple of years ago. There was a psychologist friend, a colleague of mine, who asked me, are you kind? And I said, yes, I'm kind. But of course, that was not what he meant. He meant, are you kind to yourself? And we very often differentiate between, let's say, two norms. One towards ourselves, where we're very demanding, very tough, very ambitious. And then towards others, where we give more leeway, or we sort of accept things as they are. And I've had so many clients who have been extremely hardworking, extremely ambitious, and they have never stopped to enjoy. There's a guy you may know, he goes by the nickname of Dr. Happiness, Edward Diener, an American, who says, after, 40 years of research, of really deep research, he's come to the conclusion that the way to obtain happiness is that you need to have relationships, of course, nice relationships, we know that. You need to have interesting work or projects. You need to have something that makes you get out of bed in the morning. Those two are no-brainers, right? Those I said them, but you knew them, and most of the listeners would know them. The third one, he says, is having an ice cream from time to time. So pausing and actually do nothing, sit at a cafe with an ice cream bar or whatever, and have a coffee or an ice cream or a beer. And I had this anecdote. I told one client who was chairman of 8 companies in Europe, And his work is to go to these companies and help them, assist them in the leadership roles. And he said he always worked, he in the hotel in the evening, he has his computer. And a couple of weeks later, he sent me a photo of him sitting at a bar with a beer during working hours, which is completely out of character. Even the notion for him of working hours is irrelevant, because nobody would, nobody cares where he is and what he does. But this feeling of guilt, when you do something for yourself, I can see that you probably recognize it, and it's irrelevant. It's where does it come from? It is probably our Calvinistic culture who says that it needs to be hard, it needs to be strenuous, hard work is good, etc. But in reality, we need to have these breaks, this restitution, and this fun in order to have the necessary energy for the long run. But I think it's interesting that Edward Diener, he got this ice cream point after 40 years of research.
I was thinking exactly the same, is that it took him 40 years to recognize that ice cream was good. But it is so true that pursuing happiness in itself won't necessarily bring you happiness. But if you focus on purposeful activities in life and work, then happiness naturally ensues. And this is the thing about when you prioritize contribution over achievement, individual achievement, success often emerges as well. And this is the thing about understanding what it is that really brings you this connection to what matters. And I love the concept of a human bath, and what a human bath means for each individual will be very different. What is it that they need to bathe in on a daily basis to feel? And it is this connection of feeling and meaning. What is it that then transcends in terms of a meaning for them? Because again, that's different how we interpret things. Your desire for focusing on the long term and those transition, inflection, breaking points that you mentioned earlier, this constant evolution, what's next for you?
Well, the more and more I spend time with grandchildren, and since we have 10 of those and we're with the 11th coming, it sort of takes up more and more space in my brain, because we can use all the same techniques as we do with clients towards smaller children and developing it. So seeing their potential, seeing them develop, and also, of course, simply helping our own children. We have 3 daughters and a boy, and we sort of the feminist motivation would be to help them. Say we've reached a certain point in our careers, but now we can help our daughters and also our son, of course, develop and grow by helping them, taking care of their children. So it's sort of more family-oriented development, and it came progressively due to the number of grandchildren. Simply, so it is not something that has come by decision or by volonté, which is by choice. It is or by will. It's simply a natural progression. So there's another point, Amy, that I would like to touch upon. It's this model that I built regarding choice, action, and responsibility, where you have a sort of a wheel, where with an arrow, where you have choice, action, and responsibility, and we all go through these motions. If you have a choice, but you don't act, then it's sort of procrastination. We all know that. If you have choice without responsibility, it's blame shifting. It's not about me. If you have responsibility without action, then it's simply ruminating. It's just thoughts. It doesn't lead anywhere. And I would, in relation to what your question concerning the family, I would say that it's a question of responsibility, that the more mature you get, the more you develop, the more you take responsibility for a wider group of people. And even though I said it was not will-oriented, my own progression, it is sort of this responsibility being even more clear or persistent, let's say. It's a personal development which I see in others also, of course, but which needs work, because you need to prioritize, and if you don't have your own existence and the existence of the family at the center, then it is at your own peril, of course.
And it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because you don't understand the role of a grandparent until you are one. I've been on the receiving end. I haven't become a grandparent yet, but I was on the receiving end for many years, and I wrote my book with my late grandfather. So the unconditional love that you have with grandchildren is something that you don't recognize until it happens. And then that desire to pass on the wisdom is, I can only assume, intensified. And this is from my perspective of the time I spent with my grandfather in particular.
Yeah. And the interesting concept is here that you don't never know what memory will stick. It might be, just climbing a tree or going to a shop, or, it's really difficult to know in advance what will stick. Last weekend, I went to a confirmation of a 14-year-old nephew's son. He was confirmed, and hearing his speech with specific details of what he remembered, he's 14, was interesting, because it's sort of very specific things that stuck with him. And for different people in the audience, he mentioned specific items that had stuck. And it was really fascinating, because the person in question probably didn't know that this was important to him. And so you have an immense impact on other people, especially young, of course, and you don't know when it will be, which means that you have to be a role model all the time, because you don't know what sticks. So you need to behave. You need to. I think we need to be role models, and well, be a living, good example to them. And we really have the power to influence others in order for them to obtain the good life, which the Greek, the good life, the balanced life, the satisfactory life. And I could have answered your question before with what we look for, where I answered with existential clarity, but it could also be the good life, simply, a life where you feel satisfied, where you can think of dying without hesitation. You've done what you were supposed to do. You have made a positive impact, and then it's okay.
And it's so interesting that, as you were saying, what are the memories that will stick? And when I was writing my book, the formative memories were the ones that I shared.
Yes.
And they involved flowers, being taught the names of flowers, walking hand in hand with my grandmother, and then birdsong, listening to the birdsong. And I'm sitting here talking to you, and behind me are birds and flowers. And I'm just thinking, they stuck.
Yeah,
they absolutely stuck.
And
Plants.
actually, Amy, while we're having this conversation, in the personal business plan, which is one of the book I wrote, and let's say it's the coaching system that I've built together with my wife, I have an exercise called Heaven and Hell, where you start with the day you were born, and then you go through your life, saying either on a satisfaction level, how happy were you and how unhappy were you, from 0 to 100 and 0 to -100, which means that you sort of get a graph of your life, right? My starting question is always, what is your first memory? And to my astonishment, I think, 9 out of 10 would tell a memory of playing in a garden or in the woods or something with their grandparents, at their grandparents. I'm completely flabbergasted by the, people from all sorts of backgrounds, all sort of careers, all sort of, nationalities, etc. There is a clear tendency that the first memory will involve nature and grandparents. And that is, I would never have guessed. And probably it's around 4 years of age. And it is while they're sitting there answering the question, what is your first memory? What is your first memory, Amy?
Yeah, it is that. It's exactly that. It's and I have to be careful here because I have photographs, and sometimes
Yes.
you build a memory around a photograph. So what I'm thinking right now is I remember leaning over the side of the pond in my grandparents' garden and watching water skaters go across the surface. And I don't have a photo of that, so I know that is 100% a memory. And yeah, I was around about 4. I do have other memories there are lots of snapshot moments from younger. I actually have a qualification in timeline therapy, and I take people back to the first instance of when they experience particular emotions. And that is actually really interesting because it doesn't have to be in your lifetime. It can be that you've inherited a memory or a feeling from previous generations, and it always surprises people when they actually bring something that they have no conscious awareness, but it's sat there in their cells, in their unconscious, around, particularly around anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt, because that's the ones we're looking to work on. But there will also be those incredible memories of love and compassion and kindness and beauty. Whatever you choose, you can take them into that space and observe it from above. It is fascinating, isn't it? It's just so, but yeah, you've got some memories to create here for your 10 existing and the new one to come. You've got a wonderful future ahead of you. Oh, Stephen, this has been a wonderful conversation. I would absolutely love to share with the audience how they can get in contact with you if they wish to continue the conversation in some way or form. What's the best way for them to reach out?
I think the best way is simply going to the website, our business website, which is thepersonalbusinessplan.com. So the personal business plan in one word.com. And you'll find all my details there and contact details and lots of stuff that we've put in with blog posts, with testimonials, with extracts from my books, models, exercises. We probably put a lot too much in there, but it's sort of developed over the years. And I would like also to just add one thing, that we have an online toolkit. And that's probably one of the differentiating factors in our system, coaching system, that we have an online toolkit where the client will develop in their own words the perspectives on the things that we discuss in the program, and which means that they will come out with their own ebook of around 100 and 120 pages. So they really, you will produce an ebook about your own life and your future. And as you very well know, the process of writing and putting into black on white, you can't afterwards simply deny that it's been said or promised. So it gets its own existence, and therefore your commitment to deliver on your promises to yourself will increase. And that is, you'll see all that on the website. It's of course I should say that, but it is really interesting and inspiring. So please visit the personalbusinessplan.com and contact me for any things you want. I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. And that, yes, what a great gift to be kind to yourself in the same way that you're kind to others, to give yourself that gift of understanding more about yourself. So thank you. Stephen, what a lovely conversation. It really has been a pleasure to keep it at a certain level. I know you and I could definitely geek out on this subject of purpose and existentialism, and definitely go down a rabbit hole of some description. So yeah, lovely to have this conversation today. How would you like to close out the episode?
I think you have a responsibility for living the good life, and you need to, root out or wedge out the things that don't work in your life. Don't hesitate. I've seen so many executives saying that what their one regret was not acting before, which means that if something doesn't work, then get rid of it. And if something is worth fighting for, then fight for it. Robert Frost, the British poet, says that the best way out is through, which means confront your issues. Don't hesitate. Do something instead of being afraid. Your future will be better when you make some tough decisions.
This episode's over, but let's keep the conversation going. How has this episode impacted you? Share your insights, takeaways, and reflections with actions on social media, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Your feedback creates powerful ripple effects, helping others to discover its value. Want to dive deeper into purpose? Check the show notes for links on how to work with me, where to buy my new book, Focus on Why, Create a Purposeful Way of Life, available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook, and where to sign up for Friday Focus, my weekly newsletter. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.